Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you The Trouble with Murder by Roger Bax, labeled a novel of suspense, and it was published by Harper in 1948. This is when they were Harper and Brothers, before they were Harper and Row. And I believe this book was a precursor to the launching of a very famous imprint, the Harper Novels of Suspense, that followed a few years down the road and that have a great reputation. So, full disclosure, before we go any further, I have to admit that I am the biggest fanboy there is for Roger Bax. It's not his real name. The author's name was Paul Winterton, and he wrote under three pseudonyms: Roger Bax, Paul Summers, and he was most prolific under the pseudonym of Andrew Garve. There are about 4 Bax books, 4 Summers books, but dozens of Andrew Garve books. But, I'm so fanatically devoted to this writer. Like, I had to get my hands on every single one of these books because I was afraid they were going to disappear from the earth before I could read them all. And I sort of dole them out to myself a couple a year because I kind of hoard them for when I need something special. If I have a long flight, or I'm going to be stuck in a hotel room, or I'm going to be bored, or I chose this one because I wanted to start 2025 with a great book, and I knew with this author I would, that was a given. So let me tell you what it is about these books that I love so much. The first thing is they are riveting. They're called novels of suspense, I think, for a reason, in that once you start reading, you really can't put them down. This author, like few other authors, knows how to keep his momentum from page 1 through the very end of the book. And I think that is a very, very rare talent. And how does he do it? With a combination of great characters, good villains who you want to see, caught or tripped up, a little bit of romance to keep some, positive energy in there, twisting plots that take you in different directions. You really don't know what's coming. And you have the sense that at any moment, the author is going to just bring the hammer down in a good way. And, you can almost never predict what's going to happen in one of these books. And that to me is really the joy of reading them. There's not an ounce of formula. Most of the books are standalones without a series character. They run the gamut right there. Some have a main character who's kind of a rotter, not a bad guy. Some of them have a very likable good guy. Some of them are like spy thrillers. Some of them are, what I would call adventure books. Settings vary widely, and I've never read a single book where I have not, by him, where I have not closed it and said, "You've done it again. You've done it again, my friend. You maintain your place in my heart as my favorite suspense writer." So that's why I'm really happy to bring him to you today. So let me tell you a little bit about the book. It was originally published in the UK as Blueprint for Murder, and it became The Trouble with Murder when it was, brought here to America. Both titles are appropriate. Blueprint for Murder is really a telling title because that's kind of the main gist of this book. The way it starts out is there's a deserter, an English deserter in World War I, who's been captured by the Germans, and he's going to get away from them if it's the last thing he does. So he schemes his way to walk through Europe to, get back to, the western side of the continent. And his name is Arnold Cross. And this is something that Bax does in a lot of his books, is that he'll give you a little bit of a hint here and there that a character may not be of the highest moral fiber, right? That this person has, his or her perceptions are just a little off in a way that makes you not trust them. And then sure enough, 10, 15 pages later, he lowers the boom and you say, oh yes, you set that up well, because I knew this guy was going to get up to no good really soon. So Arnold Cross makes it back to England, where he has an uncle who has made a lot of money in the paint industry during the war. And his cousin, Geoffrey, his uncle's son, has also come home from the war unharmed. And the uncle is just overjoyed. He has missed these boys, these guys, so much. He feels like he's been given such a gift to have them back in his life. And, he loves them and wants to spend time with them. And he's just a wonderful, warm character, which made me think, that, the former military man is a trope in English novels and can often be a comedic character. But this book did remind me of really the heavy toll that England suffered in both world wars. I mean, the UK gave up a lot for the world. Their male population was decimated. London was bombed into oblivion. I mean, you can understand why, a century later, it still weighs on them, the loss of life. And the uncle here, he knows that so many fathers and mothers have sent their boys off to war and, where they die, and they never see these kids again. And the uncle appreciates sort of the gift that he's been given. And he's so excited about it. He basically tells the guys, listen, I'm going to make a will, and I'm leaving you my business. Do what you want with it. Keep it, sell it. But what I have is yours. And he also settles on the guys £2,000 a year each as an allowance, which, in those days was not chump change. So what could be a happier situation than coming home to an uncle who loves you and who's providing for you, and you live in a nice place, and you've survived with all your limbs, and you've kept your mind or whatever. Well, none of this is enough for Arthur Cross. He wants his money now. He's not willing to wait until his uncle dies. He's like, I want to travel the world. I want to have fun. I want chicks. I want luxury. I want jewelry, expensive watches, whatever. He wants the money now. So he starts to think about how he can plot his uncle's death in a way that gives him an absolutely airtight alibi. And he really spends a lot of time trying to figure out ways to do this, tries a couple different things, hence the term Blueprint for Murder, the original title. And he finally hits on something. And as a reader, you're sort of impressed that he could come up with something so diabolically evil, like something a Batman villain would do, right? But of course, you don't want him to get away with it. And the fun in Roger Backs' book, or any other pseudonyms, is that ticking of the clock and that question of, will the bad guy get caught? What will happen? Will everything go according to plan? or will something happen and just blow up the entire works? Um, so I wouldn't say any more than that, but I think you can kind of get where I'm going with this. That there's in in this writer's books, there's very often kind of a butterfly effect where the most mundane thing, like the simplest thing, can cause the whole house of cards to come tumbling down. And that helps the astute investigators get their man or get their woman. And but you have no idea what it's going to be. You're just sort of sitting there biting your nails, flipping the pages furiously, not wanting the bad guys to get away with it, but loving the chase so much and not knowing what's going to happen. And a nice thing about Bax is always very satisfying endings too. He was just a supreme storyteller. Every single book of his that I have read, and I've read a lot of them, is just riveting. You can't put them down. They are truly novels of suspense. Why? For all the reasons that I've talked about. Good characters, good villains, good plots, good romance, and just a damn good story that makes you close the book and think, wow, this guy could do it all. He could really write. His prose isn't fancy, but it's very, very urbane and accessible, right? There's something about these books that, I mean, we as adults read them, but if I had teenagers, I would totally feel comfortable recommending these books because I think they would love them too. Because there's often in these books just this sense of adventure, like what every boy wanted to do, go out and sneak around and spy on people and discover the clues and not be believed by the adults who he then can prove wrong. Okay, anyway, I'm getting a little overwrought here. So just so that you don't think I'm a completely empty-headed fool, I have to give a few wee criticisms of the book, and they are the weest you can get. The first one is that in these books, romances happen instantaneously. The boy and the girl meet. It's love at first sight. They're going to get married, and they're a cute couple throughout. Traditional male-female relationships. The women they're not airheads. They're not dipsticks. They're not necessarily aggressive, but they're not shrinking violets or quaking in their boots with fear. They've got moxie. And the guys, they do believe that it's part of their job to protect the woman that they love. And, the cynical side of me says, sorry, love does not happen in one page. But that's what fiction is all about, right? The other thing, too, is, and this is purely a quirk of me, is that I tend to not like books that are set on boats. And it really doesn't have anything to do with boating. It has to do with the vocabulary of boating that can really thicken the prose and thicken the page and make it difficult to access the writing. So I've been on boats, I know what port is, I know what starboard is, I know that lingo that the whole world knows. But in the hands of a lesser writer, the nautical terminology can be piled on so thickly, particularly the parts of a boat. I mean, who knew there were so many? I mean, of course there are, but I don't know what the names of them are. The only thing that I know is that the toilet is called the head, and it's not even called the head in this book. So I wonder if that's an American thing. I don't know. Anyway, there is a part of this book, a very exciting and thrilling part of this book, that takes place on a boat, and that requires the author to describe the parts of a boat, you know, in in light detail, in gentle detail, and it's just testimony to what a great writer he was and how well he knew his audience. That for me, who doesn't particularly like this stuff, I had no trouble when we were on the boat understanding what was happening, what was going on, who was where, who was doing what. It was almost like the knowledge, even though I didn't know what some of the terms meant, it didn't matter because I knew what was happening in the plot. But I just think, I don't think the average reader is well schooled in nautical terminology, and I've just read some books where it's gone so crazy overboard, where I was like, get me out of here. This is so boring. But that's not this book. Bax did it all very, very well, but that's just my little, I have to be, a little bit of a critic, so you don't think that I'm a total airhead. Yes, so, but other than that, man, you are in for a treat if you ever decide to pick up any of these books. Again, the names are Andrew Garve, Roger Bax, and Paul Summers. I feel like the greatest gift I can give you is mentioning these names and encouraging you to find a book and just sit down, curl up. It's wintertime. It's the perfect time to read these books. They're fabulous. I really cannot think of another writer who was as consistently excellent as Andrew Garve. Try as I might. I mean, even Agatha Christie had a few clunkers, right? Even Dorothy L. Sayers had a few clunkers, like the 5 Red Herrings. But no clunkers in this man's bibliography. So pick up a book, read it, comment here, let us know what you thought about it, and that's really all I've got to say. It was a lot. But it's really nice to be able to gush about a book once in a while, because I so pride myself on, being a fair critic, and I lose all semblance of rational thought when I read books by this guy, because they're just so fabulous. Okay, thank you for listening and have a good night. Bye.